Hi, everybody. It's Jennifer with A Duty to Act podcast. I'm excited to be recording today, not only on video, but also on site at the Island County ICOM 911 Dispatch Center. And I'm here with Sofia Kohfield. Sofia, can you introduce yourself in the context in which you're here today?
Sure. So I'm Sofia Kohfield, and I'm the Executive Director of ICOM 911. And I've been here for almost 3 years as of this coming June. And this is my 25th year in public safety.
Where did you start off in public safety?
So I actually was a dispatcher down in California, and then I came up to ICOM, and I was a dispatcher here in the early 2000s, and I was always looking for a leadership role. And so I actually was in Bellingham for a little bit as a dispatcher, and then I got recruited to go back down to Northern California in a supervisor role. And then I actually got promoted to do other leadership roles, operation manager, director, interim director. And so I was down there for about 20 years, and we knew it was time to come back home. And this position opened up in 2022, and I applied, and here I am.
Very nice.
Yeah.
What brought you to being a telecommunicator in the beginning?
It was by complete, utter accident. So I was in college in Sacramento, and at that time, I was working for AirTouch, which was later bought out by Verizon Wireless in their headquarters. And my sister, who lived down in Sacramento, moved up to Sonoma County, and I was missing her, so I followed her. And at that time, I wanted to be a paramedic, and all of my skills were behind the scenes at Verizon Wireless with 4 or 5 computer screens and phones and stuff like that. And so I thought in my mind, well, I could go to be a paramedic by dispatch. And so there was a position open in dispatch in Sonoma County, and I applied for it. And I got the job, and I just got hooked right away with dispatch. I did go out in the field for a little bit. I was an EMT, and then I realized, no, I really do like dispatch, so I came back.
All right. And behind us right now, some things that might be visible in the video is the dispatch center here. And so you mentioned being behind computers at Verizon.
Right.
I mean, that's what dispatchers do, is sit behind these big arrays of computers, often in the dark,
Right.
and just track everything digitally like that.
That's exactly right. So if you do happen to see anything, dispatchers have 5 screens. So the 5 screens, they have a phone system, a mapping system, a radio system, and then a system to input all the information when a citizen calls. And that way they can relay all that information to the responders. They also have different lights that will tell people who are walking in if they're on the phone or on the radio. So if I come walking in, I'm not really loud, I can tell that the team's working hard. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We saw the lights, Josh and I walked through and we saw the lights light up, and I was like, really cool. And Erica told us that the red light is that they're on the phone, right, and the green light is that they're actually toning or dispatching, speaking on the radio.
Yeah.
So we might be able to see some of those lights up, and lights flare off in the background a little bit. Not sure from these angles. I'm sure that you get asked questions all the time about crazy calls that you get. Can you characterize sort of just a normal day at dispatch for a dispatcher?
Sure. So there's not really a normal day because every day is different for a dispatcher, but incoming calls could be medical emergencies. For Island County, our biggest call is a fall. So we'll get people who call in for fall and they need assistance. So it's just a variety type of calls that are coming in. These dispatchers are cross-trained, so they're doing everything. They're answering the call and they're on the radio at the same time. So they could be talking to a deputy who's doing a traffic stop, but then answering the phone call and talking to somebody who might have cut themselves. So no day is the same, and I think that's what's appealing to the team. At least it was appealing to me. Every day was different. Although you might have the same types of calls, you're not talking to the same person every single day.
Okay. What kind of person goes into dispatch? Is there a type? I mean, I understand people are always from different walks of life, but dispatching is such a unique community.
It is, yes. So I would say it's somebody who loves to multitask. People who thrive in this position are usually baristas, because if you think about it, they've got to do the drive-through, they're talking to people, they're talking to maybe their partner who's making something. Same thing is happening in here. We're just talking on the phone, talking on the radio, and I have to keep my ears out to be able to listen to my partners. So anybody that thrives in that environment is a great fit for dispatch.
And what's the process for becoming a dispatcher?
So it is a little bit lengthy, but what we do here is that if you apply, you get to come in and do what we call a critical test. So this test is set up to kind of mimic the multitasking. It tests your map reading skills. It tests your words per minute. It tests if you get interrupted and how you handle that interruption. And that gives us a base score. With that base score, then we go ahead and start doing interviews, second interviews, and then after that, people have to go through a background check, psychological tests. We have to really make sure that's a good fit. They also come in to do a ride-along, is what we call it, or sit-along, so that way they can see everything in action to make sure this is what they want to do. And then they're hired. And then day one begins training.
So you mentioned words per minute. That's typing words per minute, right? So
Right.
that's keyboarding skills.
Yes.
What's the, sorry, and by the way, I don't have any, like, I'm probably 3 words per minute at most.
Yeah.
It's like 3 words per minute, then a quick game of solitaire, then back at it.
Yeah.
What kind of words per minute is your target?
So for us, it's 40 words per minute. And most of our dispatchers are probably upwards of 50, 60, some are 70. And it's just repetition. You get really good at it.
And it's listening in your ears as the caller is giving you information and then simultaneously typing the shorthand that's needed or finding the spaces to input the information.
Exactly. And so a lot of what we put into the computer are command lines. So there's a lot of short codes to be able to put it in fast, but you also have to remember those short codes. Yeah.
Okay. Once the person goes through all of the testing, they end up getting hired, but actually at that moment, they're a paid trainee. And so do you do an academy style?
We do. So this is new for ICOM. So the last 2 years, we've switched to an academy style where they're in the classroom for about 5 weeks. It's a safe environment to learn all the codes, learn the computer system, practice with scenarios and examples and role play before they go out onto the live floor and actually start taking calls with a trainer by their side.
And I know from my experience, but also Erica mentioned this earlier, and Erica, by the way, is the shift supervisor right now. Erica mentioned that it's not uncommon to only have 50% of the people actually make it through.
That's true.
It's quite a arduous process, just you have to sort of come in, learn the job, realize that this is or isn't the job for you.
Right.
How do you cope with that, with the idea that you hire for, start all the payment process, the paycheck process, invest time and energy and, love and care into training people and then losing half of them?
Yes, it's challenging. So in my previous life, we had the same, we call it washout rate, 50%. And what I did was I was able to isolate how we could actually get more people to stay. And really that comes down to the training program and how you actually make it safe for somebody to learn and then give them milestones along the way and the support along the way. And then even after training, don't just let them out there. You have to have a mentor, make sure that you have the wellness programs in place. So it's kind of this holistic view of it. So when I did that down at my old center, we were 50%, and then we started tweaking a lot of the training programs and the wellness, and we got to 75%. And then another year, we actually got up to 100%, and I thought it was just an oddity, but it was because we were tweaking so many things just to make sure right at the beginning that we had a good fit. We hired them, and then the training pieces of it really made that person solid. And then once they were done with training, they had a mentor. So if they took something after training, they had somebody to talk to.
Very nice. Mm-hmm. I think you hit on something that is important in all worlds, but really unique to dispatch, and that is wellness. Because by the nature of the job, you sit in front of screens The shifts here are 12 hours?
They are.
Yeah, so you sit here in front of screens for 12 hours, and you know that takes a toll on your sleep-wake cycle, your home-life balance, or rather your work-life balance, and then also your just physicality of sitting there. So what are the sort of things that you work on with wellness?
Right. So because I was a dispatcher before, I kind of know the old style of what we were told. In the early 2000s, it was just suck it up and move along. We have completely transitioned, and probably somewhere around 2015, 2016, as an industry, we have said 911 dispatchers need wellness, whether it's physical or mental. So just because I have that background, it's super important to me. And when I came in here, I got like walk behind treadmills for our desks, so dispatchers can go ahead and still work, and they're only doing maybe 1.5 on the treadmill, but they're getting that movement. We also got bike pedals, the same thing. If you're sitting down, you could actually bike pedal and still work. And then this last year, we got a quiet room, and so the team was able to put that together. They were really excited to put that all together because they wanted their own space. And then we had some donations for a massage chair, so they have time to go and actually decompress. Mm-hmm. The other thing that we did a couple of years ago was we got an app called Cortigo, which dispatchers can log in at any time. And it has different features in there for vetted clinicians if they want to talk to somebody. They have different audios for things with leadership, finance, or even mental wellness type things. So it's just an app that helps them to be able to process whatever is going on. And as far as I know, we're the only dispatch center that has the Cortigo app. So very excited that we were able to bring that to the team a couple years ago.
Sounds interesting. I'd love to look into that.
Sure.
I'm writing that one down so I don't lose that one. Okay. What is it that makes dispatch so stressful to do? And this is going to be your opinion and your experience, but what is it that makes it so stressful?
I think there's many different things that can make it very stressful. I touched upon the fact that no day is the same, right? So one moment I could be taking something very routine, a fall victim like I was talking about earlier, and the very next moment it can be something incredibly challenging. It could be something that's maybe a burglary in progress, right? So time is of the essence. We're trying to get that out to our deputies or officers, and we want to make sure they're safe. So your stress level gets high quickly. And then after that's done, maybe you're right back down to something smaller, somebody that just might have a cut. So your adrenaline is up and down, or can be up and down. Also, you're working 12-hour shifts. So you're in a small area with other dispatchers. I spend more time as a dispatcher here with my partners than my own family. And even as a director, I spend a lot more time here than with my own family. So I think it's just the whole environment is a piece of it, but then what you're hearing is a piece of it. And then also, dispatchers don't usually get closure. So once we're done on the phone and then we get the responders going, we don't know the outcome, but we're still thinking about what that call might have been. And so sometimes dispatchers will try to find out the outcome, but typically we don't. So that's just all stress that weighs on you. And that's why it's very important to make sure that you are keeping yourself well and moving and doing all the things that are important so you can get rid of that stress.
Yeah, eating healthy food while sitting there and watching your ability to fall asleep when you finally go home and those sort of things.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the concept of closure there, because I've, in my years, that's been the one thing that I've become certain about, is that dispatchers really never get closure. And every now and then there'll be a call when I have a moment at the end, and I'll call our dispatch center, and this is after 20-some years working with the same dispatchers, but I'll call and say, hey, just to let you know, there was nothing that could have been done, or I know this didn't turn out the way you thought it was when you were dispatching it. And I feel for them. And I think that's a really important point to be made, is that, I'm a first responder, I'm a paramedic, firefighter, law enforcement's out there, all of us are out there, but you guys are really the first responders. Mm-hmm. You guys are the ones that start the process of saving or healing or helping.
Right, exactly.
And a lot of people don't think of dispatch that way.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're just out of sight, out of mind. So, but we are, and Washington State is actually one of the states that recognizes dispatchers as first responders. This happened a couple of years ago, but not all states recognize dispatchers that way. They might look at them more as clerical or secretary positions, but dispatchers can help someone in that moment of time before a responder arrives. And even in my career, I've been fortunate enough to deliver 5 babies over the phone, which is fantastic, right? Because we get to do that. So dispatchers are definitely first responders.
And you guys also, it's not just computer keyboarding skills, it's not just mapping and talking communication skills, but actually you're trained with you're charged with doing life-saving procedures over the phone, for actually translating things like CPR over the phone. How do you get that training?
Yeah, so we are actually part of the International Academy of Emergency Medical Dispatch. It's a mouthful. But they go for a certification, and then they have to recertify every 2 years. And so during that certification, they learn a set of protocols. And so they learn to ask certain questions to be able to find out what's going on with the person, and then be able to relay information via the phone to help them. So you mentioned CPR. We can give CPR instructions over the phone to be able to help that person who's in need of it up until that moment a paramedic or a firefighter shows up. So we have that. We have instructions for an AED, if somebody needed help to remember how to do an AED, delivering a baby, like I said. If somebody was bleeding, we have those instructions to help them. So they do get all of that training, and they have to recertify every 2 years.
And the computer programs sort of prompt them. So as the information comes in over the phone, the call taker is asking questions that help drive them toward those categories of care.
Exactly. So if we were, if we asked a question, and so maybe you said, I don't know what's going on with my mom. Well, then we're going to ask certain things like, was your mom awake? And you might say yes. Okay, is your mom breathing? Yes, but she's having trouble. So then that's going to tell the dispatcher to go a certain pathway. We're going to start asking questions about that difficulty breathing until they find out what's going on and how they can help before the paramedics or the fire department arrives.
Let's imagine you get a call from someone who's having a stroke, or they think that somebody in the home is having a stroke. Take us through the phone call. So, help, I think my mom's having a stroke.
Okay, so what we would do is, obviously we're going to ask the address. That's the most important thing. Mm-hmm. Once we know that, we're going to ask if you're right there with your mom. You're going to say yes.
I'm here with my mom.
Okay, so is she awake?
She is awake.
Is she breathing?
She is breathing.
Okay, tell me why you think she's having a stroke.
She was fine, and then all of a sudden she was sliding sideways, and her face it's not equal anymore.
Okay. So then we're going to have instructions that are going to actually find out if you've got a stroke. So it's called the Cincinnati Stroke Scale, but we've got layman questions that we could ask. So I would say, can you tell your mom to smile?
Okay, I've asked her to smile, and it's not equal.
Okay, so then I'm going to mark that down, and then I'm going to ask, can you have your mom say a phrase? And I don't remember the phrase off the top of my head, but there is a phrase that we have, and then depending upon what you say, then that's going to come into my calculations of a stroke.
She doesn't sound right when she says it.
Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're just going to monitor her until help arrives. Let me know if anything changes, and then I'm going to tell the responders everything that just happened, and so that way they know, okay, I'm going in for a stroke.
Okay, good. Yeah. And then, of course, from that point in time, the responders, it helps differentiate between a lights and sirens response or a non-emergency response. It differentiates between an ALS response or a BLS response, paramedics or non-paramedics, and kind of helps them get prepared. And then, of course, when the responders get on scene, it triggers the results of the test trigger notification to the hospital. Specialty hospitals might be needed.
Exactly.
So, yeah, absolutely. Your job here at ICOM is particularly challenging here on Whidbey Island, but for Island County, you have some unique challenges that maybe a lot of other agencies don't face. What kind of challenges do you have unique to this area?
Certainly. So we've got a couple different challenges. One, I would say hiring and staffing, because people have to be on the island or close by, right? So we don't have a lot of people that live off island to travel to us to work just because of our 12-hour shifts and turnaround time. Think about, adding an extra hour or two if you had to commute. So people are usually from the island. Our pool of people are smaller. And then also just because of our equipment and the topography within the island, we've got a lot of cliffs. So as far as radio waves and things like that, a radio wave is going to go and go until it can't anymore. And because the topography is the beautiful cliffs and all the things that we naturally would like, it is a problem for our radio system.
Okay. And your system here was set up. When did ICOM 911 get established?
So the history with us is that basically in 1992, it was an idea to consolidate. So prior to 1992, each agency did their own thing. So Oak Harbor Police Department had their own dispatch center. The Sheriff's Department had their own dispatch center. And then the ambulance company had their own dispatch center, and they were all over the island. So in 1992, they thought that it would be a great idea to consolidate and be more efficient, which it is a great idea. It took 5 years for that to come to fruition. So in 1997, ICOM opened up its doors as a consolidated center. But with that, they took all of that equipment that they each owned and consolidated that equipment. So the radio equipment that we have today is actually analog from the 80s.
That's a real challenge.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned that something interesting happened to the people that maintain or manufactured the equipment during COVID.
Yes. So actually, some of the equipment that we have is end of life, and the companies that supported it actually went out of business because of COVID. So we have equipment today that we couldn't send off for support or do anything. It is at the end of its life, past the end of its life.
Okay. You can take text calls that you can dispatch based on text coming into the center here. What about other information coming in digitally?
So no, we're not set up to receive pictures or videos. We just don't have enough bandwidth. We're able to take the text messages in just because of our phone system. So it was actually kind of set up kind of like TTY. So hearing impaired people, we've always been able to answer those calls. And because we've got that system, we're able to take text to 911 through our phone system. But we're not able to take anything more just because we don't have the bandwidth within our system.
What would an ideal system look like for you guys out here?
So ideally, what we would like is more bandwidth so we could actually take in that kind of technology. We would like a digital radio system so that way it's more reliable, more resilient, especially for any kind of our weather events or any disasters that we have. We want to make sure that it's going to be resilient and working. So perfect state if we had a digital radio system and then actually more bandwidth to be able to take in that newer technology.
Okay. And in fact, your dispatchers struggle sometimes to hear people clearly on their telephones.
That's right. Yes.
So
on the phone and actually on the radio. So if we're in there today, you'll often hear dispatchers asking them to repeat and them being the responders on the other end of the radio, just because they're not able to hear them fully. It could be staticky, or maybe they just hear a clipping. And so they've got to ask them to repeat and repeat, which is not safe.
Okay. I heard from JJ. Tell us who JJ is first.
Sure. So JJ is John Jenkins. He goes by JJ. He is my senior radio engineer. He's been doing this for a very long time. I'm probably going to mess it up and say 50, 55 years, something like that. He's often sought by Motorola or other experts because he is the guy when it comes to radios and engineering, electronics. So he's the guy that maintains our system. He actually created our system and maintains it and goes out to the different tower sites.
So JJ told me a couple of things, and I'm hopeful that the footage will come out. But it was just we just had a quick on camera Q&A. He said that when something breaks, he has a phone tree of other dispatch centers to call to source the parts because he can't get the parts from the manufacturer anymore.
Yes, yeah, that's right. I often call that the boneyard.
The boneyard.
So JJ is just so intelligent that he can take some parts from the boneyard, some equipment, and go up to a tower and just isolate whatever the problem is and then fix it with whatever he has. That's just how his brain works.
Yeah. When we talked about the idea that he was keeping the system together here with Band-Aids and hamsters.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, talking to JJ, he told me that there are still telephone booths on the island.
That's true. Yes, actually. Something that probably most people would have no idea what it is. There are still phone booths, and they still connect to 911. So if people were out there, they could go ahead and call us, and it would work. But I know of at least 3 or 4 of them still on the island.
And that is specifically for the purpose for making on-island calls because there can be such an interruption in the ability for signals to get through.
Exactly.
And he also told me that they don't charge, that it's just a free phone call from a phone booth on the island.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and that's how you accomplish telecommunications here.
Yes.
Now, let's talk a little bit more about the island because I think saying island can make people think that we're much more remote than we actually are, but we're not that far from all kinds of things.
Yeah, we're not. And, you know, a lot of people, when I say island, they kind of get confused because there's other islands that are here. But when I say island county, I'm talking about Whidbey and Camano Island. And so, yeah, we're close by. We have Deception Pass Bridge, so we can drive around, or down the south end, we have the ferry. So we could drive off, or we can get on the ferry to drive off, and we're not that isolated from the mainland. But if we were to have a big earthquake, you know, that bridge is going to go down, and the ferry system might not be working, and so we could be isolated because how else are we going to get off this rock?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also a fairly large island.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 30 miles on Highway 20.
Yeah, I think it's 42 miles from tip to tip.
Okay, 42 miles from tip to tip. So it's quite a big island. And you mentioned that the bulk of your calls tend to be for falls, but that's because it's a retirement. Like a lot of people choose to retire here. There's also the naval station here.
Right.
And that's a really big deal. So Naval Station Whidbey is
That's
here.
right.
I understand that there are 88,000 residents, but how many 911 calls were received through ICOM?
Sure. So last year we had just over 93,000. I think it was 93,106, which was a record for us. We're on pace to break 100,000 this year.
Okay. Yeah. And that's really key. If there's 88,000 residents to the island, but you're getting over 90,000 calls, that's more than one call per person.
Right.
And they're climbing. So explain how come there's so many calls, because what is it about this island?
Yeah, so everyone likes to visit Whidbey Island. We've got Deception Pass Bridge and Park, and that's the most visited park in the state of Washington. So about 3.5 million visitors come every year. And once they get up there, they want to keep coming down to the island. And we just have natural beauty, the beaches, trails, hiking trails, people who like to kayak, stuff like that. They come into Whidbey and on Camano. People love to go crabbing over there. So we just have a lot of visitors that come. And then, of course, if they get in a situation, then they're going to call 911. So we've had callers from people that were maybe paddleboarding underneath the bridge, or they just get out into the rough water in the passageway and they end up calling 911, which that's what we handle, and we'll have our responders go out and help them.
With so many visitors to the island, you could really imagine why there's so very many calls to ICOM 911. And with the challenges that you have and the antiquated analog system that you have, what's going on with you guys right now? What are you looking for?
So right now, what we've been doing is we've been looking for ways of finding the funding. Me personally, I've gone out for grants, legislation help. We were able to get a little bit, but it just wasn't enough. This radio infrastructure needs overhaul. And so we are going out on the ballot in April for, we're asking voters to consider a 0.2% sales tax increase. And so 0.2% is like 2 pennies on a $10 purchase.
Okay. And that's not going to be on all purchases on the island. What is that going to cover?
Right.
Or what is it going to not cover, I guess?
Yeah, so there's some exemptions. So like medical prescriptions, food, groceries, with the exception of a couple things. So like if you go out to a restaurant, that's not going to be exempt. But automobiles, if you buy automobiles, all of those things are already exempt in the sales tax. So it would still stay the same, that you wouldn't have to pay sales tax on those items.
Okay. And this really, it brings the responsibility to the residents of the island. That's true, because when they buy a t-shirt or when they buy a tennis racket or something on the island, they're going to be paying 2 pennies for every $10 more. So
Right.
2 cents for every $10 more, or 20 cents for $100.
Right.
But it really helps out with those visitors to the island that come in and love the visitors, and it's the industry here, and they buy things, and so it will help them cost share.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And so what's that estimated to bring in?
So we don't know for sure, just because it's all economy based, but we know that it could be estimated between 3 to 3.5 million coming in. And the great thing about the way that this is written is that all of that money comes directly back into ICOM 911. It doesn't go into a different account or anything like that. It has to be routed back in from Department of Revenue into us. And so it comes directly back, so we can put that money to use for our radios, for our staffing, for the technology that we need.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Sophia, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate it. We're going to get a little bit more footage. You're going to give us a tour.
Yes, I am.
That's
yeah.
awesome. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Come on this way. So this is our back room of equipment, and make sure to look up here because we've got all of our cabling and everything that goes out to the street. But all of this equipment is making it work for dispatch. This is phone equipment, this is radio equipment, and this all goes back into the dispatch center, but it also goes up to the tower that's outside. These boxes here are working all the different channels that we have. So we have a channel for the sheriff's department, we have a channel for the police department, and then we have a channel for fire and EMS. And these particular boxes are the ones that I was talking about that the company went out in 2020, so they're past the end of life.
And I asked you earlier, what stays?
Yes, so
What's good?
So what's still good are these 2 new boxes, because they're in the middle of a project that we're working on to be able to get a microwave up on a tower that's going to shoot over into another tower on the mainland. So these stay. And then obviously these batteries stay because they're battery backup, so if power goes down, all of this works. Yes. 8,
Oh,
I
no,
think
eight.
8. Yeah, 8 batteries. Yeah. So, and this is actually a fairly put together back room.
Yeah.
There's a lot of back rooms where there's just wires everywhere, but our engineers like it tight, so you see a lot of like the clippings and everything, so.
That's the old phone
So
wire.
this is the old phone wire system, definitely from the 80s. And so this is just the old technology to get phone lines coming into this center.
Do you remember these wires and we used to make bracelets and wires? Like, do you do
yeah.
that at all? No? We used to get...
You take those and you can like put them together, you braid them together.
Braid them together, yeah.
Also back here is our generator, right out of 1997. Just watch your step. So it's a Kohler, and when we have our storms, like this last winter, we had a pretty big one, and we were down for at least 18 hours. This was what was keeping everything up.
Wow.
So,
And then the batteries back this up?
and the batteries back this up. So the batteries come into play, so that way we don't lose any kind of connectivity. There's no interruption. So that'll automatically kick on. And then this, we have to make sure that we've got fuel in here, and this supports everything that's in a special outlet.
Is this diesel or?
Diesel.
It's diesel.
So this is a 1997 Kohler diesel generator.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just be careful. I'm trying to think if there's anything else of importance in here. Yeah. All of JJ's tools. So this is his go box when he goes to the boneyard, gets his stuff, and then goes out to a tower site. You hear all the fans in here because it's got to keep the equipment cool. We don't want it to overheat. A question that I often get is about the fire alarm. So if we get a fire alarm in here, what we end up doing is this button goes and everyone's got to leave because it basically sucks all the oxygen out of this room. So, and we don't want to be in here obviously, so out we go.
Okay, so this is a typical dispatcher's desk. You've got the 5 screens here. So you would have a phone system, you have a mapping system, you have the radio system, and these 2 screens would be the computer system that they input all the information. I just put it down. Are you ready for it, Jennifer? Down below is the pedal, so that's helpful for dispatchers because they can hold the foot pedal, be on the radio, and then still type. Their hands are free.
That's the light that lights up.
That's the light that lights up. So the red would be if you're on the radio, and the green would be if you're on the phone.
Okay. And then you guys just say ICOM 911.
ICOM 911.
And it was already being held for tomorrow, so I just put like
This is a big desk
It is a big desk.
and a reclining chair.
Yes, chairs are important because when you're in the chair for 12 hours, you want something that's going to really support you. So
And some of the desks lift up, so you can do standing desks.
Mhm, absolutely. Or you can pull them forward, so if you're short like me, you can have it closer to you.
How are you guys doing with your equipment here, like for the comfort of the dispatchers
Sure.
and the abilities of the dispatchers?
So this particular furniture is actually end of life as well. So this stuff that we got has been good. It's starting to break as well. So the other technician, she'll often come in and try to put things back together again. But there's things in here like fans or heaters. I think she heard me say.
It's a test. It's a test. No test.
So that's you.
Okay.
And I'm going to answer it. So there you are, right?
Okay.
And I've got pre-canned messages in here as a dispatcher. We've got it set up. Well, we're going to say this.
So keep watching.
So Island County, Whidbey, Camino Islands. That way you know you've reached us. Then if you say something back to me.
Okay. 2, 3, Aaron. Okay.
And it'll come back to me here. We'll see it. Okay, and then I'm going to say, can you safely make a voice call? Because we always want to know, if you can talk to us, we want to talk to you. We say, call if you can, text if you can't.
Okay.
So if you can, I'm going to call you. If you can't, that's okay. We're going to keep talking right here. But I've got these pre-canned messages, or I can free type right here, back and forth.
Okay.
And we've had these types of calls where we've had people out hiking, didn't have a voice call out, but they could actually text us and we were able to get them help. We've had people in situations where they were unsafe, maybe they were in a bathroom stall, and so they're able to text us.
Okay. All
So
right.
that's it.
Awesome.
So you can hang up, I'll hang up.
Okay.
This has been a special video edition of A Duty to Act podcast. I'm Jennifer Darling, your host. Thanks so much to Sofia Kohfield of Island County 911 for your hospitality.